Imagine a crime so widespread that everyone accepts it as normal. When the people committing the violence also control the narrative, it's easy to obscure the truth. But it only takes one person, armed with hard facts, to drag that reality back into the light. That person was Ida B. Wells. She was born into slavery in 1862, just months before the Emancipation Proclamation legally declared her family free. By the time she was 16, a yellow fever outbreak took both of her parents and one of her brothers, leaving her to protect and provide for her 5 remaining siblings. To support her family, she moved to Memphis, Tennessee, and took a job leading a classroom of young students. While teaching, she found her voice as a writer. To speak safely about the racial injustices she saw, she initially wrote under the pen name Iola. Her clear, sharp commentary caught people's attention, and she eventually became the co-owner and editor of a local newspaper, the Memphis Free Speech and Headlight. Having her own newspaper gave her a platform. In a society working very hard to hide its crimes, the printing press allowed her to document reality and distribute it directly to the public. In the decades following the Civil War, many white Southerners used violence to reassert their dominance. Mobs would routinely attack Black Americans to suppress their votes and destroy their businesses. To avoid consequences, these mobs needed a cover story. When they attacked innocent people, they told the authorities and the public that they were simply administering justice and stopping dangerous criminals. Local newspapers across the country would then print these claims as undisputed facts. They built a manufactured reality, convincing the broader public that the victims of these lynchings were actually the villains. Ida realized that you cannot defeat a lie of that size with opinions or anger alone. To break the illusion, she now needed undeniable mathematical proof. The fight became personal in March 1892. 3 of Ida's close friends owned a highly successful, crowded business in Memphis called the People's Grocery. Their store was drawing so many customers that a nearby white-owned grocery store began losing money. That economic competition sparked intense anger among local white residents. Following an altercation at the store, Ida's friends were arrested. Days later, a large mob broke into the jail in the middle of the night, kidnapped the 3 men, and murdered them. Almost immediately, local newspapers reported the men had been organizing an armed rebellion. They painted the victims as violent criminals to justify the mob's actions. Because Ida knew these men personally as hard-working businessmen, she saw right through the story. She recognized that the criminal accusations were a deliberate cover-up designed to excuse a targeted economic strike. She decided to look into other lynchings to see if they followed the same pattern. For months, she traveled alone across the South to document the specific details of hundreds of similar cases. She started by digging deeply into local newspaper reports, looking for inconsistencies in the stories mobs were telling. Then she cross-referenced those articles against police and court records to see if the victims had actually been charged. Finally, she tracked down the families and friends of the victims and conducted private interviews to record their first-hand accounts of what really happened. Gathering this information meant actively investigating the exact same violent mobs responsible for the killings. If she had been caught asking these questions, she would have been killed. This chart compares the mob's public excuses with actual recorded data. She proved the vast majority of victims had never committed or been charged with any crime. The attacks were overwhelmingly calculated responses to financial success, used to eliminate Black citizens competing with white businesses. What started as a search for answers about her friends became a comprehensive, fact-based indictment. By meticulously organizing the data, she built an airtight case against a nationwide cover-up. In 1892, she published her findings, presenting the public with the hard numbers that exposed the local mobs. The retaliation was swift. An angry mob broke into her newspaper office and completely destroyed her printing presses. She only survived because she happened to be out of town at the time. The mob sent word that if she ever returned to Memphis, she would be murdered. But rather than backing down, she traveled to New York. There, she repackaged her research and distributed it as a widespread pamphlet titled Southern Horrors: Lynch Law in All Its Phases. By burning down her local office, the mob had accidentally pushed her onto a much larger national stage. She quickly realized that if local governments were going to ignore the facts, she had to take her evidence to the rest of the world. She crossed the Atlantic to Great Britain and Europe, establishing anti-lynching societies and presenting her comprehensive data to international audiences. Her detailed presentations generated intense outrage abroad. By exposing the reality of the violence to other nations, she applied enormous external pressure on the United States government to address the crisis. She continued this work for the rest of her life. She used her investigative framework to help lay the foundation for major organizations, including the NAACP. The NAACP is a civil rights organization formed to advance justice and equality for African Americans. Ida B. Wells faced an entire system designed to bury the truth. But she proved that when you gather the facts and refuse to look away, the data can pierce through even the darkest of lies.